What's going on, guys? Welcome back for part 2 of editing my friend's photos. Make sure you stay tuned for this whole video because we have some crazy photographers lined up with some amazing shots and work that you're going to want to see. Alright, and as you may or may not have noticed, I actually bought the Rode Shotgun Go mic to actually bring some better quality for you guys in the audio and make it a little bit more crisp as well. And one more thing that I decided to change is I'm actually going to add a color grade going on right now and just make everything look a little bit more cinematic and professional for you guys, and I think it'll really improve my work as well. So hope you guys like that, and let's get right into the video. Getting right into it, our first photo was submitted by JVisuals on Instagram of a cool 5.0 in the San Francisco area. My first step I took into editing this photo was I actually bumped up the exposure just so I could see what I was working with and work with it from there, make it easier to edit. I then proceeded to actually bring the highlights all the way down and the shadows all the way up, as I always do on most of my photos. And when I bring down the highlights, it tends to take away some of the glow from the photo and like the shine from the car. So what I did is I dehazed the photo and brought the whites up as well to bring back some of that glow. And then instead of explaining all my HSL tab instructions and edits, I'm actually just going to let you guys watch to see what I did. But the main things I did on this photo was I took the yellow to more of an orange color to bring out that sunset vibe and the sunset color, as well as I saturated the reds to make it stand out more than the background and other things in the foreground as well. And for these next small touches, I actually sharpened the photo just by a little bit and also added a little bit of noise reduction just to take away any grain that was already there and make it a little bit more smooth. And after all my usual adjustments, I actually added a radial filter to the tires and the wheels to actually brighten them up and bring some color back to those, just so we can make the color or the picture pop as well. The second filter that I added was actually a brush filter, which I brushed over the full car and added some definition and clarity, and also bumped up the shadows and took down the highlights as well. Lastly, I took the brush tool to color over the buildings and make it look like the sun was really bouncing off of them. And after that, I cropped it to get rid of some of the distracting features in the foreground and the background. And after it was all said and done, it was a really hard edit, but it turned out amazing, so I'm glad I could do that. The second shot is by Brownie Media on Instagram of a cool Z06 that was actually in the last video, so if you haven't seen that yet, make sure you go and check that out. Alright, and getting started on this photo, I did my normal adjustments of the highlights down and the shadows up, and I also brought up the whites to make the snow a little bit more white and get rid of that gray milky color. After that, I bumped up the dehaze and clarity as well, and I scrolled down to the HSL tabs and did a couple minor adjustments, but the main idea was to desaturate the yellows from the road and other things in the picture. And then after some small sharpening adjustments, I actually added a pretty strong vignette because of how much depth there was in the photo and how wide of a field it was. Filter to the full road to desaturate those colors and darken it up to make it less distracting. And after just a few small edits, it came out an absolute banger. So it wasn't much needed, but it really came out and really made it pop a little bit more. Alright, and this next shot looks almost fake by K Fletcher Photography. It's really unbelievable how this picture came out straight out of camera, but anyways, let's get right into it. Alright, and this shot really didn't need much done to it, but I wanted to bring out that mystical vibe with all the flames spitting out and maybe bring out some color in the sky and change a couple of small things. So after my usual exposure adjustments, I did dehaze and clarity, just bumped those up quite a bit, and within the HSL sliders, I actually turned the blue color to more of a teal color, saturated the oranges to make that flame pop a little bit more, and darkened the blues to get some more detail in the sky. And after that, I added a gradient filter over the sky and added a little bit of a purplish hue, as well as made it a little bit brighter. And then after throwing it into Photoshop for waiting for what seemed like years, I took out some of the distracting features like the light post and what seemed like the car mirror in the top right corner. This picture came out absolutely crazy. And again, I'm super glad I could edit it, but anyways, go check out his work as well, and we're on to the next. Alright, this next shot is by a very popular YouTuber that also goes by 7th Era on Instagram. Alright, so the first thing that I'm sure you guys noticed and I noticed as well is that it was very underexposed, and I'm sure that was to keep some of the detail in the fire. But the first thing I did was I brought up the exposure to see what I was working with, but then brought back down the highlights to make sure that detail was still composed. And the next thing I did was I brought up the shadows to again gain more and more detail in the photo. And I did a variety of adjustments within the HSL tabs, but mostly on hue, and I'll let you guys watch to see what I did there. And one of the key things I did to this photo was I actually bumped the noise reduction up a good amount just to bring back some of that smoothness in the face and get rid of the grain as well. After doing that, I really think it brought the picture together and made the picture look a little bit like this. again, super glad I could edit this, and it was cool because I actually watched him and his friends vlog the shoot, and I got to see firsthand how they did it as well. Alright, this next banger is of the C8 Corvette by The Auto Empire on Instagram. And I only did a couple small adjustments in Lightroom, which was I desaturated the blues to bring back that white color, as well as brought the shadows up and the highlights down a little bit. And I already knew that I wanted to replace the background and make it a little bit less distracting, so I took a picture from the last video by @AutoArcade on Instagram, and I stretched it out to fit the background as well. I did this by transforming the layer by pressing Command T and then setting it to perspective. And so what I did was I made it look like it was a little bit smaller in the distance but bigger in the foreground, which is what it should look like as well. I then masked out the car using the masking tool and did a couple small adjustments that were going to make it look a little bit more realistic, and one of those things was adding a gradient of light coming in from the left side and where the light was already coming in, just to make it look like it flowed with the background and the foreground. After going through the small details like masking out the window and making the background fit with that as well, and finally came out looking like this. Definitely super hard edit, but it was worth all the work and turned out amazing in my opinion. Alright, here's a shot of a bagged STI by 530_room on Instagram. Alright, so first things first, I brought down the highlights to hopefully retain some of that sky detail, and I brought up the shadows, which made the photo a little bit more hazy, but I knew that in the end I would actually bring up the dehaze and it would look a lot better. And the only thing I did in the HSL tabs was I brought the yellow to an orange to emphasize that golden hour effect, and then I also brought up the luminance of the blue to get the blue color off of the car and make the car look its natural color, which is white. Again, trying to emphasize that golden hour effect, I added a radial filter in the background right to the left of the car and added some exposure and a little bit of a yellow temperature just to really emphasize that golden hour effect again and to brighten it up and bring out some depth. And then finally, after straightening out the horizon, it came out amazing.
It's actually, I'm not even mad. It's amazing.
So thank you for that submission, and again, we're on to the next. Alright, we're on to the second to last shot by Documented on Instagram of this insane McLaren headed down the highway. I decided to bring the highlights down, whites down, and shadows up to really bring back some of that detail in the sky, which you can see already did a lot of. I then used clarity and dehaze quite a bit just to really emphasize everything that was happening in the photo, and I then brought that blue to more of a teal color to emphasize the sky color and just bring out some more color and make it pop. And then I also brought down the luminance of the blue and orange just to make those a little bit darker and stand out a little bit more. Then I brought down a gradient filter over the sky to add some blue hue, and then threw it into Photoshop and went and looked for a picture of some police lights to put in the background. And after I got those police lights, I actually put them into Photoshop, and I changed that layer mode to lighten, which actually took away the black in the background and focused on those police lights. And then after changing that layer mode, it looked pretty much realistic already, so I just had to throw them onto both cars in the background. I know police cars are most of the time white, but I just went with it anyways, and I actually think it turned out really amazing, so I'm glad I could edit this one, and it turned out amazing. Next photo is by Kelsey Magart, maybe? I'm not sure how to pronounce that, so I'm sorry if I butchered that. I had to add another portrait to this editing challenge just to make sure I could still keep my skills in the portrait photography and just see what I could do. Alright, so the very first thing I did was I decreased the temperature to make it a little bit more blue and add a little bit of a bluish hue to make it a little bit calmer and less yellow. And then I wasn't sure how I was going to bring back some of that detail because, as you can see, it's a little hazy, and I think that's how the photographer meant to do it, because within her edit it actually looks hazier and actually looks really cool. I'm not sure how she did it, but I played around with it and added contrast to the photo, and it actually brought out a lot of detail in the photo, so I was glad I could do that. And I also dehazed it a little bit more to bring back more detail, and I believe that really brought out the facial features, so that really helped as well. And on to the next step, I actually will let you guys watch what I did throughout the HSL adjustment tab. Nothing really major, but a couple small tweaks. And then I actually did a positive vignette on this one, which I don't usually do, but I wanted to make it look a little bit more mystical and add some white coming around from the sides, make it a little bit more hazy other than her face and her body, because I wanted those to stay sharp. And then finally I brought it into Photoshop and made an exposure adjustment layer to where I bumped up the exposure and converted the layer by pressing Command-I on the keyboard. What this does is it actually takes away the full layer, but then lets you draw on the exposure. So what I did is I took a white brush and drew on small highlights over her nose, her cheekbones, and other facial features like that. And then finally I usually add a high pass filter over the eyes, but in this case I did it over the cheekbones as well. I really wanted to bring out the detail in the pores and everything, and in her eyes as well. And I really liked how this turned out, and it was a really amazing photo overall, but I think that the tweaks that I did really changed it and made it look a lot better as well. And then I didn't get a whole lot of time, and I didn't want to make this video too long, so I actually wanted to add in a couple before and afters at the end right here. And if you want to see how those are edited, just let me know in the comments and I'll just make sure and do those, but I'll show you guys these right now. I really appreciate you guys watching to the end, and if you did make it this far, comment something like, comment balloon monkey. Yeah, comment balloon monkey. And anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later. Peace.